Hi guys, James at RampantLionReviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one we are going to head back to Scotland, my home and native land, and we're going to revisit a brewery who I was very familiar with during my days of studying chemistry back at Aberdeen University. That was when these guys were really just starting to kick off. So for this one we are going to go back to Brewdog, and this is the first beer that I'm trying from the Overworks, which is their sour beer facility. It's been in the works for a little bit of a while now, but from what I gather it's only just recently that they've been starting to get these beers out to the public. So for this review we're going to have a taste of the Wave Machine, which comes in at 5.5% ABV, and they're describing this one as a Scottish sour ale fermented with Italian melons and aged in fodders. You know, all of these sour beers are aged in oak fodders, but this beer is quite interesting on two counts, because as far as I can remember this is one of the first, if not the first, Scottish sour beer that I'm reviewing for you here on the channel, which is always very cool. And it's also the first one that I'm reviewing for you with melon as well. So two very interesting points with this beer, and I'm very curious to see how it turns out. The other thing with Brewdog, of course, is that, you know, they were initially a very hop forward brewery, big, well known for their IPAs, but to be honest the quality of their IPAs I would say has dropped off in recent years. The dark beers, the big stouts and stuff like that has always remained the same, so I'm very curious to see what they can do with this new sour beer facility that they've got. I hope that they're producing some really nice stuff in there again. So we'll see how we get on with this one, and as always I hope you guys enjoy my take on this beer. So anyway, as is usual with my reviews then, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Brewdog before. No doubt there will be some more in the near future, particularly if I do enjoy these sour beers. There's all the usual social media. If you want to see more beer reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel, of course, has a geography-based tagging system, so you can go into the homepage and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, prefecture, whatever it is you're interested in. Do check out the playlist of beers from different countries. There is one there for all the Scottish beers that are reviewed for you. That's being added to whenever I get the chance to go home. And as always, please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you show the channel is hugely appreciated. So anyway, to tell you a little bit about Brewdog then. So Brewdog started off with two guys initially. James Watt, who trained as a lawyer, and Martin Dickey, who was quite an avid home brewer, but also he also actually trained as a brewer at Heriot Watt University down in Edinburgh. But the company itself was founded back in 2007 at a small brewery in the Kessel Industrial Estate in Fraserburgh in the very northeast corner of Scotland. But more recently they've moved to their very new, shiny and purpose-built facility in Ellon, which is closer to the city of Aberdeen, where I used to study chemistry. But these guys are known for being a very experimental brewery, and particularly for their strong beers at 1.2. They had the Tactical Nuclear Penguin, the Sink the Bismarck, and also the End of History, which held the title of World's Strongest Beer on 3 separate occasions. There was a bit of a duel with Schwarzbräu from Germany about who was going to hold this title, and then there was the whole Brewmeister saga as well, which we won't get into. But this company is largely inspired by the kind of American craft brewing renaissance. If you try some of the original Stone IPAs, and when I first came across the Brewdog ones, of course, and then tried the Stone ones, you could really see where the influence for Brewdog was coming in those early days. But nowadays they have several brew pubs throughout the UK and further afield. The first of these opened in Aberdeen in 2010. I was there for the opening night, don't remember too much of it, so it must have been quite a good night, but I was there for the opening night of that one. They spread throughout Scotland over the next coming year, and down into England a little bit as well, and these days they have one in Tokyo, which I think is the furthest east. They're starting to look at operations in Australia now, and they've got one down in Brazil as well, in Sao Paulo, if I'm remembering the correct city, which is their furthest one south, or kind of west if you like, from Aberdeen. So they've expanded a hell of a lot. A lot of that is due to their Equity for Punks shareholding program, which is basically where fans of the brewery can buy shares in it and invest in the company, which is really quite cool. And that's funded a lot of their new brewing equipment, their new pubs and all of these sorts of things. They've got pubs in so many countries, as I mentioned earlier. They've also just opened up their second brewery over in Columbus in Ohio in the US, and they've also started distilling spirits under the name Lone Wolf Distillery. There was a little bit of controversy there because their lawyers jumped on a pub down in Birmingham, and that caused a whole hoo-ha, and it gave Brewdog a lot of bad PR there, but they've also just finished building their overworks as well, which is where they're producing the sour beers, and they've just got them off the production line now. They've started releasing these beers in early 2019. If you check the various kind of Brewdog bar pages, they are starting to pump out their Overworks beers now, which is very, very cool. As I've mentioned before, to have a sour beer facility is a very, very expensive investment. You know, the guys at Breakeriet here in Sweden, they only brew sour beers, so for them to start up their company like that was pretty damn brave. To see one of the bigger breweries that has a lot of financial backing behind it, such as Brewdog, isn't so surprising, because there's a lot of breweries starting to expand into this now, which is quite interesting. So yeah, we'll see how it goes for Brewdog with this particular venture that they're doing now. The other thing that's in the works for them is that they are going to open up another brewery in Brisbane in Queensland over in Australia as well, which again should be quite interesting. But yeah, that's all you really need to know about Brewdog for the moment. If you want to learn a little bit more, do check out the brewery website. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram and stuff like that. That'll keep you up to date with all the latest goings on, and of course you can follow the various bars and breweries Facebook pages and stuff like this too. But let's get on to the actual tasting of this beer itself then. So as I mentioned, this one is a 5.5% sour beer. It's aged with Italian melons, apparently the first melon beer that I've tried from what I can remember, and the hops used in this one are Hallertau Blanc, Hallertau Maple Fruit, Magnum, and it has a malt base of oats and wheat, and then it has Pilsner and spelt malts as well. So yeah, that's all you need to know about the beer, but let's get on to the tasting itself. On the back here it says, Overworks is Brewdog's temple of alternative fermentation, a place where historical methods and tradition intersect with modern craft and brewing. Every beer matured inside hand-selected wooden vessels in the presence of natural microflora, unconstrained by convention. It says here on the wave machine, is hazy as a Mediterranean morning, aromas of overripe juicy melon and fruity acidity hold fast for a tidal wave of cantaloupe juice on the palate. The bone dry and deftly balances the perceived sweetness, lingering malic acidity and bite on the finish. Wave machine dive in. So yeah, it should be quite an interesting one. Like I said, there you can see the special Brewdog Overworks bottle cap on this one, and here you can see the nice artwork there. It's almost like a kind of robot face actually, which I think is kind of pretty cool. It reminds me that I was watching iRobot the other day. It actually does remind me a little bit of the NS4s on that, which is kind of cool. But yeah, the other thing I'll say about this beer is something about the price. So I noticed that on Brewdog's website, if you actually buy this beer direct from Brewdog, it costs you £9.50. I bought this beer in Systembolaget here in Sweden for 50 crowns, which is somewhere along the lines of £4. So, you know, and this is one of the controversies with Brewdog. Brewdog do inflate their prices a little bit. So that would be one thing. How can it be cheaper in a country where the currency is stronger, people earn more, than it can actually be in Scotland? That does not make any sense, and that is somewhere where Brewdog, to be quite frank, have to sort their shit out. They have been getting a bit of bad PR in terms of their pricing in recent times. So I would say to Brewdog, when it comes to the pricing of this beer, get it sorted, because there's no real excuse. If I can buy this beer for 50, maybe even it was 60 crowns here in Sweden, there's no real excuse for charging people in Scotland £9.50 for this. Said my piece, that's it. Let's get the beer out and we will get on with the tasting on this one. So 5.5% ABV, melon aged sour beer, this one. Yeah, nice bit of smoke on the opening then, and we will get this guy out and into the glass. I tell you straight away, you can smell some of that lovely melon juicy quality on this one. I do remember having a chat with the original brewmaster at Brewdog, Stuart Bowman, in one of the bars one night. Lovely, lovely guy actually, unfortunately not with Brewdog anymore. Maybe that's one of the reasons that their IPAs and stuff went downhill a little bit, right enough. But yeah, he always said he wanted to do a little bit of sour beers, but of course he never particularly got the chance with Brewdog. But you can see with this one, just look at this beer. You can see very little head on this one, but it looks lovely, bright and yellow. If I hold it up to the light, it is quite hazy actually. If I put my fingers behind the glass, you can see there is a degree of transparency to this one, but you know, it's pretty damn hazy. There was a very thin, foamy white layer to this one, but otherwise nothing particularly surprising about this beer in terms of its appearance. You know, the sour beers can be a whole host of different colours and stuff like this, but this one looks, you know, it's kind of along the lines of like a sour IPA or something like that in terms of its appearance. A lovely bright yellow colour. There's one or two big bubbles sticking towards the side of the glass and a few little ones just heading up towards where that kind of head would be in this beer. So yeah, let's take a closer look at the aroma and just see how we get on with this one. I'll say when you open this beer up, you do get a nice bit of the melon quality out of it. There's a good bit of a sharp lemony citrus note in there, but you can smell some of the nice wheaty and oaty qualities coming out of this beer as well. But yeah, it smells very nice actually. So yeah, it's got a good little bit of sweetness in the malt base there. You can smell those kind of white, wheaty, bready qualities. A nice bit of the oaty creaminess is coming out as well. There's also a little bit of that kind of there's also a bit of a biscuity, grainy kind of thing coming out with this beer too, which is very, very nice. So in terms of the hoppy side of things then, you know, the Hallertau Blanc is a really, really interesting hop. It gives you those kind of white grapey qualities that you would almost expect of the it gives you those white grapey qualities that you would almost expect of like the Nelson Sauvin or something like that, or even the Enigma hop that's coming out from Australia now. It really has those kind of qualities to it. Maybe the Hallertau Blanc is like Europe's answer to the Nelson Sauvin. So you can pick out some lovely white grapey notes to this. The the melons in this one are very, very juicy, and they're kind of integrating into that whole white grapey, melony sort of vibe that this beer has. At the front end of the nose though, you're really getting some of those sharper lemony sherbet qualities that you would expect of like Lactobacillus or Brettanomyces. It doesn't say exactly which bacteria they're using in this one, but then again, you know, it may well be that they're actually making their own strains and stuff like that in the brewery there, which is quite interesting. I would be assuming that they brew the base beer, if you like, for these in the regular Brewdog facility, and then piping it over into the Overworks to age it in the fodders and stuff like this. I'll be assuming that's what they'll be doing, because that's what Mikkeller do, of course, with Baghaven here over here, you know, in Copenhagen. So yeah, that one is really, really interesting. That's, yeah, if you get the chance to try some of those Mikkeller Baghaven beers, you know, have a go at those. They brew the beers at the War Pigs brew pub and then take the stuff up to the brewery out at Baghaven. But yeah, this one does actually smell really nice. Lots of juicy melons. You can pick up some grassy and floral notes, you know, if they've got the Hallertau Mittelfrüh in here. You've also got the Magnum, which is quite a floral hop too. You can definitely pick up some of those nice grassy, floral and green parts of the hops. It definitely has a nice edge of freshness to it, this one. So as I always say, take a little bit of time and enjoy the aroma of the beer before you get stuck in, but let's have a taste of this one now. So this one is the Wave Machine from the Brewdog Overworks in Ellon in Aberdeenshire in Scotland. My very first taste, if I'm remembering correctly, of a Scottish sour beer brew, and this one, you know, it's one of the very first kind of Scottish craft breweries that I encountered. My first one as well, with melons from what I remember. So let's get stuck into this. Slàinte, Skål. Ooh. Now that's quite sharp, I will say. Yeah, that's one of the more puckering sour beers that I've had in recent times. It really is quite sharp, that actually. Maybe you just need a few sips of it though to kind of get it balanced a bit more. Yeah, no, I will say that this beer, and I suppose it's the same with all the sour beers. The sour beers, when you take that first sip, sometimes they can be very, very puckering. So just be aware of that if you're trying this beer style. But it does actually smooth out quite nicely. But that said, it does still have a good bit of sharpness to it, this one. So yeah, maybe that's what Brewdog are going for, you know, really sharp kind of puckering beers. But it does smooth out very nicely, and when you're starting to examine the aftertaste of this one, it does actually work out pretty well, I have to say. So yeah, let's try and examine this a little bit more. So yeah, with this beer, initially straight away you get that sharp lemony sherbet tartness. It just comes in and blasts your tongue actually. So yeah, as I was saying with this beer, it has a really kind of puckering sharpness to it in the beginning. It has quite a lot of impact, but it just smooths out a little bit more the further you go into the flavour. So just be aware of that. But I'm wondering if that's this beer in particular, or if that's kind of the Brewdog approach, that they really want to just blast you with a little bit of sourness in this. But we'll see how we get on, because these beers, they do tend to open up a little bit more the further that you get into them, actually. So yeah, the middle of your palate then, it really is, it kind of is just blanketed with that sort of wheaty, what you can feel the further that you go into the aftertaste. There's a little bit more of that sort of white bready, wheaty quality there. There's some of the oaty kind of smoothness to the beer as well, and that starts to come out a little bit more the further that you go into the aftertaste with this one. It does have a little degree of crispness to it as well, and that'll be the Pilsner malt that's giving it that, actually. The spelt malt, I think, tends, from what I remember, spelt malt tends to give you a little bit of graininess, but you don't get too much of that. To me, it's really the wheaty qualities, the oaty qualities, and also a little bit of that kind of Pilsner crispness, actually, that's coming out of this beer. But yeah, the malt base is kind of, it's pretty plain in this one, actually, but it does give the beer a nice little bit of smoothness and almost a little bit of sweetness as well the further that you go into the aftertaste. But the thing about this one, I would say, is that it's really quite, it really is actually quite puckering, which is kind of interesting. But yeah, it's a really, it really is quite really sharp, this one. That's the thing about this beer. So with this one then, it's got a lot of, it really has a lot of the lemon sherbety qualities that you would kind of, that, you know, it seems to be that it's a little bit of, it's just a little bit overpowering, to be honest with you, with these kind of lemon sherbety qualities, actually. It's got a little bit, the melon that's in there, to me, it comes out in the aftertaste, but it's not quite as prominent as you might expect it to be. You know, when you get some of these beers that use different fruits, I've had lambic beers that use yuzu and stuff like this, you know, you might expect that from the melons in this one, but you know, overall, it's, the melon to me just takes too much of a back seat in this beer. This one really is kind of, it really is sort of quite meat, like wheaty and sort of oaty, but it's also quite a bit of, it really is just very, very sharp on the lemons, and the melons just take kind of too much of a back seat for me. And the further into the aftertaste you go, it does smooth out a little bit and you get a little bit more of the melon, but really that sort of lemon sherbety sharpness is just very, very kind of, it's almost just really puckering and just overpowering a little bit. It's a little bit disappointing, to be honest with you. I was hoping that, you know, this would be a really, really nice kind of well blended beer, but it's just, it is just a little bit overpowering with that, you know, lemon sherbety sort of sharpness from the bacteria that they've used in this one. So yeah, I mean, it's okay, but you know, it's just not quite as good in comparison to some of the other sour beers that you're going to find there. On the hoppy side of things then, in the back corners of the palate you've got a nice little bit of earthiness, and it's actually quite a kind of smooth earthiness, which is what you would expect from the German hops, you know, the two Hallertau varieties, the Blanc and the Mittelfrüh. You've got that nice little bit of light earthiness there, and as you come further forward along the sides of your tongue, that earthiness and just kind of smooths out a little bit, and you do get a little bit of that floral quality just towards the front of your palate there. Then round the very front curve of the tongue you've got a lighter sort of grassy part to the beer as well, and then behind the front curve of the palate, of course, that's where you get that little oily bubble where those juicy, fruity aspects of the beer, the fruits that are extracted from the hops, start to shine out. And yeah, in this one again, you get that sort of white, green, grapey kind of quality of this one, and that's the Hallertau Blanc shining out in this one. But yeah, with this beer, it really is just, it does, in fairness, the more and more you drink of it and the more it warms up a little bit, you start to get a bit more of the melons out of it. And the melons are kind of coming out around the front edge of the tongue, but it really is, to me, it is just a little bit too sharp on that kind of lemony quality. I've had, you know, sour beers that are a good bit more balanced than this. A lot of them have just a nice kind of subtle sour quality to them. Some people, of course, like these ones that are very, very sharp like this, but I think with the sour beers, for me, the most important thing is all about the balance. And if you try some of these beers from the likes of Rodenbach and Eau de Gois and things like that, you know, they are just a little bit more balanced than this. But that said, it is one of the first that they've released from what I gather, so I'm sure they'll kind of continue to experiment with this, and I'm sure you will see different things coming out over time. But the melon, of course, the other thing to take into account is that it is quite a subtle fruit in terms of its flavour. It's not the most pungent fruit like grapefruit or passion fruit and things like that, and oranges indeed can be. So yeah, just bear that in mind with this beer. The melon qualities are quite subtle, and it's very sharp in terms of that, you know, sour beer quality. But the melons do give you the beer a little bit of juiciness, and in fairness to it, that does actually blend quite well with the kind of white sort of green grapey flavours to this one. You know, the melons, as I say, come out on the very front kind of edge of the tongue, if you like. When you add fruit to a beer, it always comes out just around the edge of the tongue and kind of suppresses a little bit of those kind of green hoppy qualities, and then, you know, it really does mix well with those sort of white green grapey qualities that this beer has. So you know, overall, it is a really, it is in some ways, it's quite a nice beer, but I just think it could be a little bit better balanced. But you know, it's one of the first sour beers that they've released, so we can let them off with that a little bit and see how they go in the future with these. But yeah, have a go at it for yourself and just see what you think. I would just expect, when they're saying that it's a melon sour, you do expect the melons to be a little bit more kind of potent in it, if you like. And it's particularly when melon is quite a subtle fruit, you would expect them just to take the kind of sour puckering kind of qualities of this one back a little bit and just let the melon shine out a little bit more. That's probably where I'm, you know, that's maybe my kind of gripe with this beer a little bit, actually. But yeah, I would say that in fairness, when you go and drink with this one a little bit more, the further that you get into it, the more it does open up a little bit. It's definitely kind of fair to say that. So yeah, you know, I think, as I said, malt base to this one is quite smooth. It has a little touch of sweetness to it. You've got some nice kind of German noble hop qualities. It's quite sharp in its you know, sour tart kind of tartness, puckering qualities, if you like. The melons are quite subtle, but it's also got a nice little bit of that sort of white, greeny, grapey quality in there. That's a fairly decent summary, I think, of this particular beer. So yeah, in terms of the mouthfeel of this one then, I'd say it's a fairly kind of, you know, it's a fairly mid-bodied beer, this one. I always find the sour beers are a little bit lighter in comparison to the other styles of beer that you get. Carbonation does have a little bit of a prickle to it on this one. It's quite an oily sour, this one, I would say, as well, actually, which is quite interesting. But a lot of sharp tartness to this one. As I say, I find this one really quite puckering, actually. There's some nice juicy fruity qualities to it, though. The malt base is very smooth. The malt base actually does have a little bit of crispness to it, as I was mentioning with the Pilsner malts earlier, and you have got some nice juicy fruity qualities, both from the melons in this one, and also the kind of white green grapey qualities as well. But overall, it's an interesting beer, this one. I just think the sourness in this, particularly when it's melon and sort of white grapey flavours that you're expecting in this one, the sharpness of this beer just does need taken back a little bit to let those flavours shine through a little bit more. But overall, it's an interesting beer, and it does make me curious about some of the other ones that they're going to produce over the next little while. So I'll try another one or two for you on the channel at some point fairly soon, and we'll see how we get on with those. I would say though that if you're buying this one in Scotland or in the UK, then it is quite expensive. £9.50 for this, I think, is a little bit pricey, to be fair. But you know, if you can get it for the price that I got, around 50-60 Swedish crowns, which translates to about £5, then I would have a go at it for something a little bit different. But yeah, let's leave it at that for this one. It's an interesting beer. Have a go at it for yourself and just see what you think. And I'd be curious to try some of the other sour beers that they're producing at Overworks, but they are a bit on the pricey side, I would say. But yeah, once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comments section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Brewdog and their Overworks series as well, and I'm sure I'll catch you guys very soon with more beer reviews. Until the next time, make sure you check out my social media, have a look at some of these Overworks beers, and I'll catch you guys very soon. This is the Wave Machine from the Brewdog Overworks in Ellon in Aberdeenshire in Scotland. Quite an interesting beer, but a little bit more kind of sour than some of the other ones you might kind of find. So until the next time, slàinte just now, and I'll catch you guys soon. Slàinte, skål.